evening. Welcome to Employment Law Today. I'm your host, Eric Sauber. I'm an employment law and business law attorney, and I host this live weekly talk radio show and this weekly live video broadcast every Tuesday night from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where I have guests who discuss some of the most interesting and engaging hot topics and issues that business owners and employers face during these trying times. And in that spirit, I would love to welcome tonight our guest, Ms. Lynn Hazan, an recruiter extraordinaire and founder and president of Lynn Hazan Associates, Incorporated. Lynn, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm thrilled to be with you.
I'm thrilled to have you on the show tonight, Lynn. Really looking forward to our conversation. And I want to tell our audience a little bit about our topic tonight, what we're going to discuss, and what they can get from the show. And then I'll give you, of course, a proper introduction so our viewers can really get to know you a little bit more, if that sounds good to you.
I'm in.
All right, great, let's do it. So our topic tonight, everyone, is hiring trends post-COVID, a recruiter's perspective. And, Lynn and I were speaking about this to the point where, hiring the right job candidate is really a challenging task for any employer. And the decision of which person will fill a position, if it's done too hastily or without proper vetting, can lead to many headaches, including time spent in training and then firing, and then searching for and retraining a new candidate. So it's no surprise that many companies hire recruiters who have their finger on the pulse of the latest hiring trends and understand employer-employee dynamics. And the question comes up, and many of you might be listening tonight and wondering about this, what are some recent trends in hiring and recruiting in light of the changing landscape to a work-from-home environment? How has the pandemic and the subsequent laws surrounding the workplace, how have they changed the employer-employee relationship? How does that impact the way in which employers need to hire in a 2022 world of mass resignations and reassessments of what work means to employees? So if you'll tune in this evening and join me and join my guest, again, the very talented, experienced recruiter, Lynn Hazan, we will discuss these issues along with tips for companies in hiring new employees. And now, with that backdrop, I want to introduce Lynn more formally. Once again, Lynn Hazan is the president of Lynn Hazan Associates, Incorporated. Lynn has worked as an award-winning executive recruiter for 37 years, and 2022 marks Lynn's 22nd anniversary, as president of Lynn Hazan Associates. Congratulations on that, Lynn. That's quite an accomplishment. And Lynn also specializes in communications, marketing, and consulting searches for clients throughout the U.S., with a special emphasis on the Chicago area and the Midwest. Her clients are Fortune 500 and entrepreneurial companies, as well as PR and advertising agencies, trade associations, and not-for-profits. Candidates are placed in consumer, business-to-business, and nonprofit sectors. Lynn's philosophy as a recruiter represents what she calls relationship marketing. She maintains long-term relationships with both clients and candidates to ensure successful placements. Now, Lynn is definitely known and acknowledged in her field. She was cited in the Chicago Tribune's article, Standing Out in a Crisis Economy. Lynn is heavily involved in the professional community as well. She serves on the DePaul University's Marketing Advisory Council and was awarded the Lifetime Achievement Award at Drehas College of Business Marketing Advisory Council in June 2018. She's also an active member of Chicago Women in Bio and ANA B2B, formerly BMA Chicago, and a member of the year for 2011, 2012, and new member of the year for 2003 to 2004. Lynn also volunteers for Chicago Innovation, and in June 2003, Lynn Hazan was recognized as the Chicagoan of the Year by the Chicago Jewish News in recognition of her humanitarian relief work on behalf of Ethiopian Jewry. A professional storyteller, Lynn is also a published writer, a native of Montreal, Canada. Lynn graduated with a BA from McGill University in Montreal in Canada, and then an MA from Brandeis University in Waltham, Massachusetts. So that is, I think, quite the background, and no doubt we're in for a treat tonight. Our listeners can really get some great information. So again, Lynn, really glad that you're here with us tonight.
Thank you, and I'm happy to contribute. a little bit of what I've learned over the years.
Sure. Yep, absolutely. The years, they do go quickly, I find. When I tell people I've been practicing law for, I think, 23 years, I have to stop myself and say, is that right? Is my math correct? But just going, to the first question. So I've given our listeners a little bit about you, but if you could tell us maybe a little bit more about yourself, maybe some personal anecdotes, or even what drew you to the world of recruiting, and why did you form Lynn Hazan Associates?
It's a great question because recruiting to me is almost like second nature. It's part of my DNA. And little did I realize that it would be my calling early in life. So I give you this as a background because when candidates change careers, sometimes they don't know what they're going to land up doing. I started off working in the not-for-profit. I got my master's from Brandeis. I moved to the Chicago area. I worked quite a few years with a lot of students and running student internship programs as well. It was time to move on. And when I moved on, you're not going to believe this, but I worked part-time at the Goodman Theater selling subscription tickets on the phone. And lo and behold, I landed up meeting a woman who had an executive recruiting firm, and I transitioned into the world of recruiting. And that was 37 years ago. That's literally how I started. I was so green, a green pepper couldn't be greener than that. And because I was eager and wanted to learn, I'm a lifelong learner and very committed to the process. I learned very quickly. It's amazing what survival skills will do for you to get you on board. And I got myself very involved with professional associations, being involved with groups and organizations, and starting to build my relationships with both clients and candidates. Then over time, I moved to another firm, and then something started to happen. Years as I was recruiting, clients came up to me, candidates came up to me and said, Lynn, why don't you have your own firm? I'll give you my business. And I started to think about that. And I said, you know what? I have a vision of what I can do with Lynn Hazan and Associates. And day one, as soon as I started my business in 2000, my clients came with me. And it was really a joy, not only to continue the recruiting relationship on their behalf, but know that I had their trust and that I could do a great job on their behalf because they already knew what I could do for them. And since then, I've continued to grow. Many of my candidates have become clients. My clients have gone from one company to the next, and they keep calling me each time they move and said, I need your help, I need your help. So for me, this is really what epitomizes my commitment to relationship recruiting, because I form those lifelong relationships with my clients and with my candidates. And I've been doing a lot of workshops recently with Marcus Buckingham, and he talked about your passions in your life and what your strengths are. And forming those relationships, understanding what the client needs are, understanding what it is to have a trusted relationship makes a huge difference. Because when I work with my candidates, it's very important that I know who they are, what their strengths are, and what they're going to bring to a potential client rather. And often the candidates are too close to their own backgrounds. And they need someone like myself to say, ooh, I like that in your background. Tell me a little bit more. Expand on that bullet. And then what happens is it's like that magic sauce. That's the perfect fit for the client. And those candidates are often too close to their own accomplishments. I help bring that out in them so that they do better. I call this, actually, this rule is applicable for many things in life. It's the rule of 80-20. 80% prep, 20% execution.
Sure. And that was interesting, Lynn, really from that, what I'm hearing is a few great things. Like one, I think how the seed for recruiting was planted in you many years ago, and that chance, perhaps interaction, those phone calls while you're working at this particular Goodman Theater, and then I think how the seed was sort of replanted later on to forming your own company. You talked about having some perseverance and persistence, being like a good listener, a good learner. And then from there, you talked about relationship building, right? And how your candidates become sort of repeat clients, repeat customers, if you will. I think that's very important for our audience tonight to realize that, in the hiring process and even engaging employees, there's a relationship component to it. It's not just that they're cogs in the wheel, which kind of raises an interesting question for you. Let me just check something here. Okay, we're doing well with time. I wanted to ask you, like, in what ways, you've been doing this for a long time. You've been recruiting for, as you mentioned, 37 years. In what ways has the COVID-19 pandemic changed the world of recruiting? Like, for example, how's it changed in terms of how you evaluate and find candidates in 2022?
In many ways, it's the same, because
Okay.
my goal is to find best in class talent. And I'm very committed to, quote, best in class. So whether I meet the candidate on a Zoom call, at an industry event, at a conference when I'm speaking, it really doesn't matter in that regard. In some aspects, yes, it is a little different now, because over the last 2 years, I haven't been to industry events. I haven't spoken at conferences, although I've done Zoom seminars, and I've initiated a whole group of new kinds of educational programs to reach out to potential candidates. I'll give you an example.
Sure.
When I work with PhDs and postdocs and MDs, many of these kinds of candidates are working or still in academia, and they want to transition into the world of business, and they don't know the business world. So I've created a series of workshops to help these PhDs and postdocs transition from academia into industry, as they like to call it. And the world of healthcare recruiting is so dynamic. There are so many needs and so many jobs, and you have to move fast to be able to find the talent, because they are recruiting and placing these candidates as fast as you can get them. So in that regard, it doesn't matter if I haven't met them in person, as long as I can really get to know them. I take the interview process very seriously, and I'm very intuitive, because I can gauge very quickly if a candidate is going to be a potential fit for a client, or I might say, you know, let's keep in touch. I might have the perfect job for you in 2 years, or I might have a freelance gig. Actually, we just placed a candidate doing freelance medical writing for a medcom agency, and they only hire PhD. So part of this whole thing in the age of COVID and the pandemic is we always need to reinvent ourselves to keep up with the changing tools and technologies, to our commitment to excellence, to finding the right candidate. And in some ways it's easier, in some ways it's harder, because we have to go find the candidates and establish the
It's interesting, Lynn. Yeah, I mean, I think that you mentioned that in some ways the pandemic has changed recruiting, in some ways it's not. And I want to get a little more into that with you, that question. I think some great stuff we can talk about, how, you know, employers navigate those choppy waters of like vaccine mandates. I could certainly speak to that, or even the whole great resignation, worker awakening. But before we get to that, we need to take our first commercial break. So I'll just tell our audience tonight that folks, you're listening to or watching, or maybe both, Employment Law Today here on Talk Radio NYC. Stay tuned for more with Lynn Hazan. We'll be talking all about recruiting and impact of COVID on the recruiting process. So stick around. We'll be right back.
Are you a business owner? Do you want to be a business owner? Do you work with business owners? Hi, I'm Stephen Fry, your small and medium-sized business, or SMB guy, and I'm the host of the new show, Always Friday. While I love to have fun on my show, we take those Friday feelings of freedom and clarity to discuss popular topics on the minds of SMBs today. Please join me and my various special guests on Friday at 11 a.m. on talkradio.nyc.
Are you a conscious co-creator? Are you on a quest to raise your vibration and your consciousness? I'm Sam Leibowitz, your conscious consultant. And on my show, The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, we will touch upon all these topics and more. Listen live at our new time on Thursdays at 12 noon Eastern Time. That's The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, Thursdays, 12 noon on talkradio.nyc.
Are you on edge? Hey, we live in challenging, edgy times, so let's lean in. I'm Sandra Bargeman, the host of The Edge of Every Day, which airs each Monday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on talkradio.nyc. Tune in live with me and my friends and colleagues as we share stories and perspectives about pushing boundaries and exploring our rough edges. That's The Edge of Every Day on Mondays at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC. Uplift, educate, empower.
Welcome back to Employment Law Today. I'm your host, Eric Sauber. My guest tonight, Ms. Lynn Hazan, Lynn Hazan Associates. And we're talking about recruiting trends and recruiting during the time of COVID and in these kind of tricky, challenging times. Interesting to hear, Lynn, in that question about how the pandemic may have changed or impacted recruiting. I heard you talk about maybe some sort of constants, if I'm correct, that may have stayed the same in terms of finding the right people, or maybe I think you mentioned people are transitioning more from perhaps academia into other fields, and I'm not sure, maybe that's perhaps a function of the pandemic or not, but I'm kind of curious too, like how has the pandemic changed or impacted, let's say, for example, how you prep a candidate for like a Zoom interview compared to an in-person face-to-face or something like that?
I want to respond in two ways. Number one, there's a gap in the talent pipeline because there were so many positions that either were eliminated or companies weren't hiring. Now there's massive need. For example, I have lots of PR agency job openings. And what's different now is that the candidates can work virtually. They can come to the office maybe 1 or 2 days a week. One of my clients, actually, she moved her office downtown so that it can be more accessible to talent so that they won't have to commute. So there's a change that we have seen, very significant impacts in terms of hiring. One other agency wants their people in the office downtown because we work together as a team. So in terms of prepping candidates for interviewing, by now, a lot of the candidates have made the transition to knowing how to interview via the Zoom and what to put, what not to put. You notice my door is closed, so my cat won't come and sit on my desk, like that. And the level of professionalism is definitely coming back. And if candidates are serious about interviewing for a job, they're going to make sure they're properly attired. They have also had a chance to practice over the last couple of years. So this is not a new topic about how to interview on Zoom. And when I coach my candidates, I spend a lot of time helping them to understand what the client is, the culture, the need, the ideal candidate, and how they fit. Because here's the difference in working with a recruiter. When a candidate applies for a job by himself, herself, they don't know the inside of the company. And it's not that I'm hiding anything, it's not confidential information. However, I have insights and knowledge and experience having had multiple hires for the same company. Also, what I do when I recruit on behalf of clients, I dig deep. I really get to know much more about the company, the culture, who's going to be a good fit, who's not going to be a fit, what they want in a candidate that they haven't seen in other candidates. So when I recruit, I fine tune the search to make sure that the candidate is a proper fit for what they're looking for. And also we have to look at years of experience. So I might counsel them, well, at this price point, you can get this kind of a talent. At this price point, you can get this kind of talent. And what we've also seen is the salaries have gone up. And so every company has its own set of criteria for candidates. So is it a for-profit? Is it a not-for-profit? Is it a trade association? Is it a Fortune 500 company? And all of these different companies have different salaries, bonus programs, vacation programs. So
Yes.
I make it my business to understand the total aspect of the company so that we can talk about work-life balance. We can talk about what gets a candidate excited to get out of bed in the morning,
Mhm.
difference on behalf of their clients and organizations, because I want to be able to tap into that energy. I want to make sure this is the perfect candidate, and let me tell you why. And then the candidate interviews better.
Mhm. It's great, Lynn. I mean, first of all, I love your energy and your passion. Like, I really appreciate it because I share that as well in my professional life. Think about what I do, employment law for companies, but really great. I'm loving that. And also, I'm hearing some things that were interesting, that whole talent gap that you brought up, that's happening now, and companies trying perhaps to, let's say, to accommodate maybe employee candidates. Because I know that what I've been reading and seeing too is that with a lot of remote positions and work from home type scenarios, a lot of candidates might be looking for a company that will provide them with a hybrid or remote situation. So I can see how there's sort of there's something that on both sides where there's some changes in the environment. So good to hear that you work with candidates, and I know you work with companies too, right? Because they're not in opposite of each other. They're on the same side. The goal is to get a good fit for a candidate to the company, and it has to be mutual, a good fit that the company likes that candidate. Is that right? Or?
Yeah, give you an example. I just got a new job for a freelancer to do web design work. Candidate has to have very strong technical skills and SEO abilities. The candidate can work anywhere. They don't care. And it's an ongoing freelance gig. So we want that perfect candidate who looks forward to having an ongoing relationship, doing work, and being able to say, you know what? I have my own business. I have my own single, and I can dedicate X number of hours a week. And this might be a great way for me to get a really good ongoing assignment. Likewise, we fill these full-time jobs. And because the counseling aspect is so important, I help to give not only feedback, but to manage expectations. So for example, so many clients are looking for the same profile of candidates. I want 5 to 7 years of experience. So I said, well, why don't we look at maybe 4 to 6 years so we can draw on a bigger pool of potential candidates who are perhaps a little bit younger in their careers, so we have more to pull from. And so having that trusted relationship with the client, with the candidate, and then they say, yeah, okay, we could do that. It gives more options. And not only that, but when candidates apply, I have to tell you that candidates go click, 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 click.
Right.
And they could spend more time reading the specs to save themselves time, then they won't be as inefficient with their time, especially in working with a recruiter.
Yeah. It's I think all really good points here. Like that as we kind of navigate the world of recruiting, I can see definitely how there are some kind of constants in terms of making sure that the candidate is the right person for the position, and just kind of, and I like that thing about sort of going past the narrow boxes, right? Like because I know that I've had clients, companies who are hiring, and I might proofread their job post, their ads, to make sure that it doesn't violate any employment labor laws. But often they'll say looking for 5 to 7 years experience, or 3 to 5, or 5 to 10. And I guess what I hear you saying, Lynn, is sort of, do we really need to be constricted and constrained, right, to such sort of narrow boxes, right? What about people that might be a little more on in the years or a little less, but maybe they're fast learners if they're 4 years out, maybe if they're 9 years in business, but they think are willing to start from a lower position. I think there's a lot of room maybe for companies these days to kind of rethink some of those narrow approaches to hiring. Is that what you think?
I agree. In
Yeah.
some ways, the clients are tight with specs with number of years of experience because they correspond with salary bands. And then other instances, they're more flexible, like for this freelance web designer, they don't care how many years of experience they have. Can you do the job? Are you up to date with the technology? Can you be efficient in your time so that when you do the work, you're not learning on the customer's dime? You can already go to work immediately and get the job done in the number of hours that you quote to do the gig. So that's really important. And also because when I dig deep into a candidate's background, I see things about themselves that often they don't know about. And I say, let's bring that up more to the surface so that you can talk about that. And I have to tell you, one of the things that I'm a real particular person about is writing abilities. I'm sad to tell you that the writing skills of a lot of candidates have gone down. Now, maybe it's because of the casual nature of communications and using cell phones, and there are a lot of typos. And in a field where I professionally recruit for communicators, we can't have typos. So it's a standard that the candidates have to measure up to, because again, we want best in class. And we want to make sure that when I present a candidate, I vetted the candidate already.
So you work with the companies and the candidates, right? You do represent both sides sort of in the recruiting world, which I guess might give you a good insight into what each side is looking for and the other, and what's perhaps missing, or what they might be trying to find in a candidate. And the whole vetting process, you mentioned the importance of people being careful and not having typos and errors. I think that's such a good point, because I've seen, and again, my work with companies is different, right? I represent them in employment law matters, but often they have questions around hiring, and they might show me what they're doing in terms of a job post or a candidate, say, resume. And I've also known people, like colleagues who applied for jobs, and sometimes people just have a little thing such as maybe an unprofessional looking email address, right? That could sort of be a big negative when it almost outweigh a lot of positives they might have in there. Have you found that to be the case, that you have to sort of remind candidates that, and remind companies to look for the little fine details like that, the email address they're using, or the typos is a good example?
Well, clearly, if a candidate in every picture that they have on Facebook, they're holding a can of beer, that's going to raise some issues. Or if some candidates have had multiple jobs. Now, this is always a big issue with a lot of candidates and clients. Like, why are you hopping all the time? Why are you staying at a job less than a year? What does it say about you? Because the learning curve and the adjustment period till you get in and make active contributions sometimes can take a few months. So why are you running away? Or did the company make the wrong hire, and then the candidate was asked to leave? So that's why we have to really dig deep when we interview the candidates. Why did you leave each job? And tell me and be honest, because sometimes it's a wrong fit. Sometimes the company, for whatever reason, closed doors, closed the department, there was a layoff. And the more I know why the candidate left, then I can position the candidate in a thoughtful and professional way.
Right, that transparency sounds so crucial in this process. And I want to hear more about the process with you and talk about it with you. We have our next commercial break, if you can believe it, at the halfway point, but this is really good stuff we're talking about here. And I want people to stay tuned, because I think when we come back, Lynn's going to talk more about some of the ways that she helps people to companies to better vet candidates, and we'll talk more about ways that candidates can present themselves. So stick around to Employment Law Today here on Talk Radio NYC, and we'll be right back.
I am Joseph Franklin McElroy, host of the new podcast, Gateway to the Smokies. It airs on talkradio.nyc every Tuesday night from 6 p.m. to 7. Every episode is dedicated to memorable experiences in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park and surrounding areas. This show features experts and locals who expound upon the richness of culture, history, and adventure that awaits you in the Smokies. Tune in every Tuesday from 6 p.m. to 7 on talkradio.nyc.
Are you passionate about the conversation around racism? Hi, I'm Reverend Dr. TLC, host of the Dismantle Racism Show, which airs every Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern on talkradio.nyc. Join me and my amazing guests as we discuss ways to uncover, dismantle, and eradicate racism. That's Thursdays at 11 o'clock a.m. on talkradio.nyc.
Are you a small business trying to navigate the COVID-19 related employment laws? Hello, I'm Eric Sauver, employment law, business law attorney, and host of the new radio show, Employment Law Today. On my show, we'll have guests to discuss the common employment law challenges business owners are facing during these trying times. Tune in on Tuesday evenings from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern Time on talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Welcome back to Employment Law Today. I'm your host, Eric Sauver, and here every Tuesday night at 5 p.m. on Talk Radio NYC. Our guest tonight on the show, Lynn Hazan from Lynn Hazan Associates. Lynn shared with me an interesting point that her name can be pronounced in various ways. There's Lynn Hazan, Lynn Hazan, if I'm not mistaken. So, pardon me, Lynn, if a couple of times I may have blended some of those pronunciations, but it's great to have you on the show. Really great to have your insights and your expertise.
One of the things that's fun about having a name that can be pronounced in 3 different languages really attests to my background, because I'm a child of immigrants. My parents were born in Egypt and Syria. They tried to come into the United States, but they didn't let them in. So they went to Canada, and I was born in Montreal. So I grew up speaking French. And so if you speak French, you say Hazan. If you speak Hebrew, it's Hazan. And if you speak English, it's Hazan. And I respond to all of them.
Talking about that with the names is that, I have a maybe less interesting background. I was born and raised in New York City, or in Long Island, New York State. I think so. But what I noticed is that people mispronounce the name all the time. That was either Saver or Sever or Sarvier. And people often said Savar. I thought it was French. So in that sense, I had many mispronunciation, but none were, the only one was correct. So which is Saver. But getting back to what we're talking about, tonight, I was wondering if you might perhaps share with our audience maybe some, I guess you could say, case studies or anecdotes, examples of, say, ways that you're helping companies now, or maybe certain patterns you're seeing and things you're helping them to correct. Like, what's a good success story that you could share with our audience?
Actually, I had a recent example of a candidate I placed for the 3rd time. Now, I never pulled him out of his previous jobs. He had successful tenure at all those jobs. And a client is a high-end furniture showroom, and they were looking for a head of marketing. I knew immediately who the right candidate was going to be, and I presented him. Actually, this reflects what I call the rule of 3, because when I present talent to clients, I don't want to just throw stuff against the wall to see if it sticks. That wouldn't be the best use of my expertise. Instead, my goal is hopefully within the first 3, and hopefully the first candidate will be the candidate of choice, because I want the client to feel reassured that I have their best interests at heart. And I want to make sure that the right candidate is going to be the one that will set the standard of excellence. And I knew what they were looking for. I knew this candidate was going to be the perfect fit. And he is blossoming in his new job. And he had a track record. I knew him. I placed him. So that's something to be said about having that track record of success. So when I talk about having relationships with my candidates, and I literally track them over time, my business, it's not a transaction until we close the deal. So by getting to know my clients over time and what their needs are and watching them grow, then I'm in a better position to be able to recruit on their behalf. And one of the aspects that I talk a lot about with my candidates is tell me your case story, so that they can talk about accomplishments. And then when they revise their resumes, the case stories pop on the resumes and the candidates interview better. And then they have a resume that looks like a mirror image of what the client is looking to hire. So we can go check, 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 check. And this candidate is a really good fit. So we earn the trust of the client. I've earned the trust of the candidate. I've coached the candidate for success. Now, when the candidate is interviewing, the candidate, I'm not in the room. The candidate It has to do it on his own or her own and be totally assured and confident that that person is going to be the perfect candidate of choice for the firm. And this is what I love doing, is making those matches and knowing that I've prepared my candidates the best possible way. Now, what also candidates need to do is take responsibility for their own prep. Check the website, check the competition. What's the latest news about the firm, products or services? Is it positive? Is it negative? What's the chit chat going on social media about the firm? Because then you never know when the client's going to ask that question. The candidate has to be prepared. Yes, I saw that story in the Tribune yesterday about that shopping center. And so, yes, we just got them as a client. So the more we know who our clients are, what their needs are, what our candidates are looking for, and making sure it's a good match on both sides will guarantee that kind of success. So it's a very active, ongoing basis. And I really value curiosity. If my candidates are curious, that means they're looking at the world as a totality. Do they listen to the news? Do they follow what's going on? And you'd be surprised how many people don't follow the news. It's really magic. So I'm constantly training my interns. Actually, I've trained my interns so well that I place them in jobs. So that's my commitment to the next generation of talent. I want them to feel confident, to have the skills, to have the talent and the expertise, so they can go to a new employer and say, yep, I can help you because I have all these technical skills. That's the other difference that I'd like to highlight about hiring right now.
Right.
Is that the clients will go, I need this, this, and this. And more often than not, they're technical skills that the candidate has to have in walking in the door. So no surprise, front-end web developer, data scientist, online learning, that we've had these jobs to fill within the last year because the needs have pivoted into more technical skill sets the candidates need to have, in addition to being great communicators and great marketers. So it's critical for candidates to keep learning, take classes. There's so many that are available online. Show your commitment to continuous learning, because you will do that and be the value added candidate of choice when you join the firm.
See, those are some good points there, Lynn. Just like some of the words that popped out at me, talking about, commitment and curiosity and being well informed and for preparation, being prepared too, which I think is crucial for any person in any endeavor, whether you're looking for a job, whether you're hiring a candidate. The company should really, I think, prepare for what type of person they want to fill the position, and then of course be prepared to interview that person in a very, I guess, mindful, focused way. So it's interesting to hear that those are your traits that you try to, I guess, emphasize or bring home to your candidates and companies as well. And definitely that trend you mentioned just now about the technical skills being so important. I think that's probably something that's been happening for many years, as you said. And I could see how in the last couple of years, particularly, with the pandemic and so many people needing to be more tech savvy, like working remotely, using different platforms. I'm wondering if that's even something you're seeing more of in the last, say, year and a half, 2 years, compared to the change from 2013 to 2015.
It's accelerated because the candidates have to be tech savvy, not only in getting on Zoom and having the conversations and knowing when to come in and out, and also being able to use more of the technical skills because of all the tools that are now available. Frankly, the technology has really evolved to such a point that there's so many more choices available to candidates. I'll give you an example. When I'm looking for writers, they need to have very strong design skills now, and Adobe Illustrator, and know how to use Canva, because it's not just enough these days to have text, words on a page. It's hard to keep somebody's attention span. So if a candidate can visualize content and have visual communication skills to supplement the written word, that's a winning formula. And Here's an interesting story. One of my clients was looking for a candidate who knew how to use PowerPoint skills, and the younger generation of talent only knew how to do PowerPoint when it came to fashion or food or restaurants, and we
Right.
needed candidates who could do PowerPoint for business to business. So I'm saying to the younger talent, do PowerPoint decks, do presentations. My interns create decks with me all the time, so that not only do they learn how to create these decks, whether it's in Canva or PowerPoint, they then co-present with me when I do presentations, or they work with me to put the deck together, and then I present if they're not able to co-present with me. So then as a result of this, the candidates get many more skills in their toolbox that they can contribute to a client. And we've seen an accelerated force for that. Even like, I'll give you an example with these medical writers, that candidates have to be able to create the content for journals as well as for presentations and have the visuals go with it.
What I hear in that, interesting to say, if I just jump in for a second, is that the way in which society changes and the way in which we communicate changes over time, and how that impacts what, say, a candidate who may, let's say, be in business or in their field for 20, 30 years, the way that they would write professionally in 2002 is very different than, let's say, like in 2022, where you need to have that imagery, as you mentioned, and content. It kind of shows, I think, how writing has changed. I mean, I know as even an attorney that even the way you write for the courts and the judges, it was one type of writing. But if you're writing, let's say, for your content for your website or an article or blog post to share, you want to keep it much more short and sweet and personalized. Something I learned over the last decade or so, when I first, kind of went to that aspect of promotion of my firm and used to write kind of much more, I think, luminous type of materials for a blog. This is a long time ago, of course. And then I had a good friend of mine in marketing say, you got to make it really short and really sweet. Yeah. And so I think it's like what I hear you saying is that the candidates kind of need to know their audience and know also the medians for communication and how they change. And like it goes both ways. The old generation of people who've been very seasoned, I'll say, and then the younger generation, not to stereotype, but one maybe who don't have certain skills and maybe need to like bone up on the PowerPoint for corporate. So I appreciate those stories and that an example you gave of that, placement that worked out well. The rule of three, I think, is a great one also. And we actually, let me just check one thing here. Lynn, I think we're coming up right now on our commercial break, but when we come back, we'll talk about some of the ways in which some of the changes in the laws might impact recruiting, right? We've got so many things going on in the employment landscape in 2022, which I'm quite abreast of and familiar with, and I know you are as well. So I think our listeners will have to know about that also. So stick around to Talk Radio NYC. You're listening to Employment Law Today with your host, Eric Sarver, and our amazing guest, Lynn Hazan. Stick around. We'll be right back.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Join us every Tuesday at 4 p.m. Eastern for The Mind Behind Leadership, where we focus on what leadership really means to us and to others. We have practical discussions with the CEOs of some of the world's largest companies, owners of small businesses, and experts in psychology and behavior to get that inside track, what to do, what to avoid, and what really happens. Join me, Graham Dobbin, at the new time, 4 p.m. every Tuesday for The Mind Behind Leadership, here live on talkradio.nyc.
Hey everybody, it's Tommy D, the Nonprofit Sector Connector, coming at you from my attic. Each week here on talkradio.nyc, I host the program Philanthropy in Focus. Nonprofits impact us each and every day, and it's my focus to help them amplify their message and tell their story. Listen each week at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time until 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on talkradio.nyc.
Calling all pet lovers.
Pet Avengers, assemble!
On the Professionals and Animal Lovers show, we believe the bond between animal lovers is incredibly strong. It mirrors that bond between pets and their owners. Through this program, we come together to learn, educate, and advocate.
Join us live every Wednesday at 2 p.m. at talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Welcome back to Employment Law Today. You're watching tonight and listening to Lynn Hazan, my guest, and our topic, of course, about trends in recruiting and hiring process during COVID, and just in the modern landscape of employment law in the world in general. And that kind of brings me to a really good question I had. I think it's a good question, Lynn, that perhaps you can shed some light on for our listeners. A lot of business owners out there are very aware of the different changes in some of the new laws that affect employers. And particularly, my office is in New York City, and I think there's a lot of New York laws. And one law I can use as an example, there are some new laws that require employers to show salary transparency in job postings, right? To say, show the minimum, maximum, and what they're offering for a position. Like New York City has that law now, and some other cities and other states are doing that as well. And I'm wondering, like that law, for example, salary transparency, if you're familiar with it, you think that will that adversely affect companies in the recruiting process, or could it be an asset in the recruiting process?
It's a very good question, and time will tell really where this goes and how long that law will stay in effect or if it changes. So let me give you an example. If you know what I know what the parameters of the salaries are when we recruit on behalf of clients. We know what the high end is, what the low end is. So if we go public with it, then the question is, who's going to apply for those jobs? You also have to think, is this a Fortune 500 company? Is it an agency, an ad agency, a PR agency? Is it an entrepreneurial company? Is it a startup? Is it a not-for-profit? Because each of those kinds of companies have different kinds of salary bands. So my concern is that if people say, oh, this pays 100,000 or this pays 150, okay, click, 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 I'm going to apply for that job. And they have no business applying for the job because their backgrounds don't match. Okay. Secondly, I'm going to be very curious when these candidates come on board, if everybody knows what that candidate is earning, what's going to happen to the staff who are already on board at the company? Are the companies then going to say, oh, we need to do a compensation survey and reevaluation of everybody's salary? And are their salaries then going to be brought up to be competitive? Do you know that?
That's one of the points that I've been wondering as well. And how might that contribute as an employment lawyer? I wonder, let's say, could it feed sort of the gristle in the milk for employees who are there to file discrimination suits, even if there's not a basis? They say, hey, this new job is similar to what I'm doing, and they're posting for 150, I'm making 120. It must be because I'm fill in the blank, because I'm of a certain nationality or religion or gender. And that might be, certainly has been the case in some situations, but it might not. You might have had certain perks that are non-salary based that maybe were tailored to you. Your job may have started a different time frame. Like you may have different educational components, qualifications. So I'm with you on this, Lynn. Yeah, I've had mixed reactions to this law. I think like everything you pointed out about the tension with existing staff, right? And people applying for jobs they might not best be fit for. And also I think ruins some of the ability to bargain. A company might not have the best salary, but they might have some wonderful other perks they want to present, and want to present the salary in a context, right, of an interview. And just seeing on a screen of like, here's a number, there's a number. It's like, it's hard for people to get the whole context. I think also some folks might be passing up great fits because they just see the number and they go swipe left or go next. When maybe if they didn't know the number until the interview, they would have said, well, I found out the number is X, but I really liked this part of the job. I really felt a good connection. I love their work from home policy. I love their family leave. So I tend to think it's a challenge too. As an employment lawyer, I have many concerns, but I was wondering, you mentioned some cons there. Are there some pros to the salary transparency laws? They're very big talk in the town these days for us, people like you and me, and I've been really following.
Well, the pro can be is that the salary is this mystique. All right. like hidden? And how do we find out about the salary and what are they withholding? And by the same token, we have to look at the monetary value of benefits, because that could be 25 to 30% of your salary. And people think about, there's value there to medical, dental, vacation, time off, etc. And you need to look at the totality of the picture. The other example to add to that, for example, I know it's a law in the state of Illinois and quite a few other states, is that we cannot ask candidates what they're earning. We can ask them, what would you like to earn? And they can give me what their projection is. And then I can say, well, what you want, my client can't pay, or this is what we're working with. So part of this whole deal with salary is the art of negotiation. You want to create what I call win-win-win, not just win-win, because it has to be good for the candidate, it has to be good for the client, it has to be good for the recruiter. And so when we create those circumstances that everybody comes out with a smile on their face, then it's a really joyous experience. And part of that is learning how to advocate on your own behalf to get what you want, and ask, okay, is my generation the generation that work-life balance is important for? Likewise, certain companies, it's not a 9-to-5 existence. You're on your phone, you're on overtime, you're talking to the media, you're covering a crisis. You have to be there because you're going to be managing the media. So you have to look at the totality of the situation, what the needs are, and also what is going to be competitive in your industry. If you're living in New York City, the cost of living is higher. If you're living in San Francisco, it's more expensive than Des Moines, Iowa. Okay. So part of it is know who your audience is, know the kind of company, their sales, if they're private or public. So obviously private company won't necessarily have all that information available. And the key thing, it's all about the fit. Because we can haggle back and forth over $1,000 here or there, or whatever the case is. Are you going to be happy? Are you going to see yourself making a contribution and be the kind of candidate who will grow within the job and create value? When I talk about candidates, it's what's the value add you bring to a job. Whenever I do presentations, I have my deck and then I have a resource kit. That's my value add that I give to the people who are participating in the workshop, because I'm going to give them more than what they expect.
Right. You know, I think those are all excellent points, Lynn. I really do. Like, you've been giving us such good information, not just about recruiting and the trends and patterns, but also some concrete of how you work with people, right? I think you've shared a lot of your unique philosophy with us. I think it's really been fantastic having you on tonight. And I definitely agree with you that I think, you know, the good fit is important and the whole picture. And it's often hard to see that. I think a lot of these laws that are aimed towards good goals of, you know, say pay equity and eliminating pay disparities, it can kind of backfire in a lot of ways. And it's really, I think companies definitely want to work with a recruiter such as yourself, because I think these are very sensitive issues. They have to have pay transparency, for example, in New York City, and yet they might want to wait on that end. So speaking of you and your connections, I want to give you some time to talk about how people can contact you. The floor is yours for about 2 minutes, and then I'll take us out. But how can we get in touch with you? And I can share something on the screen as well if you'd like, but how can people find you?
You can find me very easily. My name is Lynn, Lynn, Hazan, Haz, like zebra, An. The firm is Lynn Hazan and Associates. And there's my contact information, so you can see it on there. If you want to join our newsletter, you can take a picture of our QR code and automatically get subscribed to our weekly newsletter. We're very committed to keeping in touch with clients and candidates and send out an updated newsletter every week. We have job openings, we have articles, we have free webinars and workshops, so that we really provide a lot of value to the people who subscribe to us. We also have lots of job openings, so you can see those posted. And I'd like to leave you with a sense of inspiration, if I could.
Sure.
My
do, yes.
Stars for Success. So it's about recovery. It's about renewal, rehabilitation, using resources, and getting rewarded. So when we follow those R's for success, everybody benefits. And so we love working with great talent, with great corporations, agencies, trade associations, nonprofits, so that as communications and marketing recruiters, we're going to make a difference on your business. And it is really an honor to be able to work with great clients. Here's the key thing: communications. It's really, really important that I communicate with clients, that clients talk to us, so that we have feedback going back and forth, so we can use our time as efficiently and as effectively as possible to let them know what's going on the street. Because the more we can communicate what we see, what's missing, what we need more of, what we need less of, then we can create much stronger alignment to make that perfect placement, and then everybody will be happy. So as relationship recruiters, I'm very, very thankful and grateful for you for the opportunity to participate in this show, and look forward to working with clients and candidates and to going one step forward.
Wonderful, Lynn. Again, Lynn Hazan, everyone, Lynn Hazan Associates, we thank you so much for that information. It was great having you on the show tonight. I love your passion, energy, your details, and your vision. And I would just say, if you like what you heard, folks, tune in Tuesday nights, 5 p.m. 6 p.m. We've got great guests talking about all these helpful issues for business owners, for employers, and for employees alike. Right here on Talk Radio NYC, we've got some great shows coming up. Joseph Franklin McElroy and his show coming up, Get Rid of the Smoky, shortly after this. So once again, I'm Eric Sauber. Have a wonderful night. And Lynn, thank you so much.
Thank you. What a joy. It went so fast.
It did. Yes, it always does. We'll be back, I'm sure. So have a wonderful night and a great week. And thank you. Thank you once again.